The humanitarian disaster in Mariupol is where we begin this Wednesday morning. Ukraine says as many as 100,000 people remain trapped by the intensifying Russian attack on the city. It is a crisis that is only coming to us in glimpses at this point. With the last Western news outlets now gone from the city, videos like these posted on social media are really the only way to see what's happening on the ground. Somehow, people are still managing to do it. Despite power and internet outages and unrelenting Russian bombardments, they are capturing the fighting on camera while trying to find shelter.
It was bombing every 5 minutes, and we hadn't any central heating, gas, electricity, food, water, nothing.
Now, these are some of the thousands of refugees who are managing to make it out of Mariupol, making the drive north in private vehicles. And you can see the signs saying children in Russian taped on windshields. But Ukrainian officials say Russian forces continue to disrupt attempts to reach the city with bus convoys and relief. We begin our coverage this hour with Salima Shivji, who is at a Polish border point where Ukrainians from places like Mariupol may end up as they cross to find refuge and safety. Salima, good morning. Set the scene for us there this morning.
Well, Heather, I'm at one of the largest border crossings from Ukraine into Poland. This is a processing center where as soon as people come across this border, either in private vehicles, in buses, as you can see behind me, or by foot, they're brought here. And so there's food set up for them that they can get upon arrival. There's water. There are toys to be handed to people, the children fleeing so many cities in Ukraine. What we know in terms of those crossing is that more than 2.2 million have crossed into Poland. That is more than all of the neighboring countries combined. So Poland is taking the lion's share of these refugees. And what we're hearing from border officials is that just today there is a more of a jump, about a 3% jump in the figures of people crossing the border just this morning after a bit of a quieter week this past week. So we're hearing that it is getting busier and busier. And as you mentioned, some of these people are coming from some of the hardest hit Ukrainian cities like Mariupol. Obviously, we heard from Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky about the situation in Mariupol. He called it absolutely inhumane conditions. Humanitarian groups have said it is just a shattered hellscape of a city. But 7,000 people were able to flee Mariupol just yesterday. And I mean, that number, though, is very small considering how many are still trapped in the besieged city in that southern port. 100,000 people estimated to need to get out of there, to get out of those inhumane conditions. As you mentioned earlier, you know, there's no food, there's no water, there's no power, there's very little information also trickling outside of that city of Mariupol. What we're also hearing from President Zelensky is that he is accusing Russia of blocking a humanitarian aid convoy that was trying to get those supplies that are just so desperately needed inside Mariupol. He is accusing Russia of seizing that convoy along with 15 rescue workers and drivers who were trying to get those supplies in. So a very tense situation and really frustration boiling over from President Zelensky as he talks about the need to have stable humanitarian corridors to get assistance in to the civilians that are just enduring constant bombardments and shelling in Mariupol, obviously a very strategic port for Russian advances. And to show a little bit of how the war is going from the Russian side, Mariupol actually sustained additional shelling from the sea. That's on top of what has been happening over these past few weeks from airstrikes, from land troops. Now they are receiving more bombardments for at least 7 Russian ships in the sea that are hitting Mariupol. And the Pentagon has confirmed that Russian troops are inside the city. It is unclear how much of the city they control, though.
Salima, you mentioned President Zelensky. He's speaking to Japan's parliament today, so we'll get more from him on the messages similar likely to what you've been reporting on so far today. We do have, Salima, some video I'm going to bring into our conversation. This is from a suburb of Kyiv. Ukrainian forces have recaptured it. We're hearing a lot about counterattacks like this one, Salima, that are raising questions again about Russia's military leadership, the competency of their forces, the planning or lack thereof that went into this invasion. And we're getting a response this morning from the top spokesperson for Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin. What does he say?
Absolutely. A lot of questions about the offensive or perhaps lack thereof of Russian troops, particularly in the last couple of days. Now, the top spokesperson for Russian President Vladimir Putin, Dmitry Peskov, actually was speaking to CNN, and he was asked about this question. He did concede that Russia has not yet achieved its military goals in Ukraine. And the operative word, though, of how he phrased it is not yet achieved it. He did still insist that everything is going to plan according to what Vladimir Putin's plan was when he was pressed on this question. I'll let you listen to a little bit more about what he has to say.
Well, first of all, not yet. It hasn't achieved yet. Of course, no one would think from the very beginning about a couple of days. It's a serious operation with serious purposes. And I think if we try to remember those purposes, those main goals of the operation, it's to get rid of the military potential of Ukraine.
So there you go, his assessment that nobody thought this would be done in a couple of days, so the goals have not yet been achieved. Now, he was also pressed in that interview about nuclear weapons. Of course, we heard U.S. President Joe Biden expressing warnings that he believes that Russia is ready to use biological or chemical weapons, or perhaps, go into their arsenal of nuclear weapons. And Peskov did say he didn't outright deny that there would be any use of nuclear weapons. He said Russia would resort to that if there is indeed an existential threat, as he termed it, to the country. And so that was the way he phrased the possibility of any sort of nuclear weapons being used in this fight. Not an outright rejection, just based on whatever threat Russia sees in terms of what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. Heather?
Salima, thank you so much.